Well, this is the Pimpmobile X-2 large grid build at its infancy. It starts off with a refinery with an extra layer tacked onto the side so it's 5 wide, and then we've got these 3 welders mounted on some cargo boxes and some heavy armour. So we've got heavy armour and a camera on one side of this refinery, and then a bunch of storage and welders behind the armour, constantly rebuilding that refinery, constantly nailing it back together. So here in blue, apart from the battery, I've added 8 nano grinders, large grid build and repair units that will all be projecting forward and fixed in grind mode, so that as soon as I get within 200 meters of something, they'll start shredding and disabling all their weapons and power systems and such. And then when they stop trying to murder me with those, I can switch the disable feature off and they can switch to just grinding the whole thing up. So here I've tacked on an advanced rotor and started adding my small grid bits. I've got the gyro behind the cockpit, and I've added 2 shield generators behind the nano weapons. So it's effectively armour defence on the nose, armour repair, then the nano weapons, and now I've added a couple of engines, a couple of shield generators, and I'm feeling out where I want to put this small grid stuff, because I'm going to have a tail end part of the ship that contains the small grid bits I want. So this is adding batteries to create a bit of a rear structure behind the cockpit that I'm going to add some engines to, and batteries are nice and tough, and this is an electric ship so it needs a lot of batteries. The small grid area consists of a T-junction, a storage, and a bunch of small grid nanos, and they will be for repairing the ship, which is what build and repair nano systems are usually for. The big ones will be grinders for attacking, and the 5 or so I put on the small grid section of the ship will be the ship's repair system. So for strafing engines, I'm looking at having grid access to cargo from underneath the ship. So I'm looking at where the docking and foot will go, and I want to be able to get to my cargo from the top and the bottom of the ship. So these frames are figuring out where I want to mount the big rear engine, and they get replaced with batteries. It's just a big battery structure at the back there. And I've slotted in my side-mounted survival kit, so I can use this ship as a bit of a raiding point if I want to go and do dangerous things and get my clone bodies killed a lot. I can keep popping back into existence inside the ship instead of losing track of my ship or having to respawn miles away from it. Contemplating where to put the nanos there. Had to move some for the survival kit, but there's a blue coloured nano in between the survival kit and the rest. And I think that's my armour repair. I've got 5 repair bots. One just does armour. So you can see there's 4 shield generators there now, and I've added a bit of tapered armour down the back here, sort of covering these batteries. Mounted a big lift engine and some forward engines, and doubled up my strafing engines, so I've got 2 strafing engines on each side, and I've got a pair of reversing engines sort of mounted, not exactly on nacelles, but I've got a bit of an armoured block mount that hangs down under the ship and has an engine mounted on each side. So that's the overall length and structure of the ship. You can see the third reversing engine, which is centrally mounted underneath there. So they're nice and scattered. If I need to slam on the brakes and reverse away from an enemy, keeping my armoured nose on them, at least my reversing engines are scattered across the ship, unlikely to all be knocked out at once. So the small grid area has just got my connector and my foot on it, because why build a heavy large grid connector and large grid foot? The small ones do the same job, but they're lighter. Same with the little nanos that do the repairs. There's no point in putting more big ones in. They only have to repair a ship this size. They've got plenty of area of effect for that. So I've got 5 small repair systems. One just does armour, to keep my armour sealed. One just does the rear engine block, to stop that lifting engine down the back from getting shot off or from becoming detached. It repairs the batteries that it's connected to as well. And then there's some more general repair. There's one that just focuses on thrusters, one that just focuses on repairing everything back to functional, which is a handy one to have. Does the whole ship, but it just looks for anything that's broken and fixes it just back to functional and then stops, and then the other nanos can finish the job later. Gradually filling it in, got the top armour on, so the angled wedge at the front, on the sides and on the bottom and top, the angled wedges are mostly heavy armours. There's a few bits of heavy armour, like attaching these engines. They're docked to a piece of heavy armour. There's heavy armour on the nose attaching the refinery to the rest of the ship. There's heavy armour in front of the big engine at the back on the top here in white. 3 sort of partly angled blocks. There's heavy armour where I expect bullets and missiles to be pinging off the surface. Whereas the flat sections that aren't on the front and aren't presented to the enemy, those are all regular light armours. So starting to fill in most of the armour at this point, and the small grid sections starting to look a bit more final too. It's got a hydrogen tank mounted on there, plumbed into the medium cargo there. That's so that the survival kit has a bit of hydrogen to draw on for when you're topping up on your raids. So I changed the umbilical system of the ship's just part of the station at the moment. It's not a ship at all. It's just an extension of this particular building. So I just rearranged it so that its umbilical now comes in from the side, and then that freed up the front for me to finish the front armour and things like that. So it's just attached by that one arm now. I've got scaffold over the cockpit to protect it and shield it a bit. Scaffold over that top box for cargo access. So in here you can get to the survival kit to top yourself up, or if you die you respawn in this sort of cozy little pit down here. Got a passenger seat. Got access to the cockpit from in this little cabin in the back. Got passenger seating and space for many upgrades. 4 forward engines, 3 reverse engines at this point. This isn't a stunt ship. Doesn't have a lot of strafing power. If it's full of salvage and I roll it over onto the side, it will plummet and land on its side. You need to fly it quite carefully. But it'll have plenty of lifting power when I'm finished with it. So there's 2 hydrogen tanks mounted onto that medium cargo now. So the survival kit has a plentiful hydrogen supply. There is no oxygen system on this. It's a jet aircraft. It's not leaving the atmosphere so there's no oxygen set up at all. Hydrogen is just for the survival kit really, and you can sit in the cockpit and swap your hydrogen bottle into the tank and top it up as well. So it's got those two purposes. It's nice to have a touch of hydrogen on board. So, completed and detached, and then docked. Fill it up with a bit of armour plate and some fodder for the welders to use to fix everything on the front of the ship. This is got a second engine added on. This is some of the salvage from early salvage missions, all these thruster components, uranium, advanced tools, all sorts of goodies, an elite rifle or two, as you can see. It's pretty sweet loot, so I need to extract that from the connector, but you'll be able to see the ship closer to its final configuration because it's got two lifting engines on the back at this point, because it can absorb so much loot from the enemy. Look at those 4,000 plates there. There's just so much weight in here that I needed a second lifting engine and then some. I think there's more lifting engines to come for a final configuration of this ship. More lift to come. I want to be able to actually fill it up and fly home with a full load of junk. It's going to need a little bit more tweaking of armour around the back and whatnot. I can't armour around those batteries where they butt up against the engine there, but batteries are armour as far as I'm concerned. They've got comparable hit points to heavy armour, plus they're super useful. And it's at the back. Hopefully I'm not getting shot at the back too often. And I do have a shield. So now I've got these fast regen coils attached to two of my shield generators. So I've got really fast regenerating shields that hopefully just keep throwing the shield back up in the way of things. So in our next thrill-packed episode, it's time to check out the maiden voyage and some combat. See how much I enjoy using my face as a missile shield. That's a trick question. I always enjoy using my face as a missile shield. I'll live for it. So, tune in next time.